Hello, Longevity Lifestyle Designers. This is Zach, your secrets of longevity.com. This past weekend I was up in my cottage helping my dad close it up, and at one point we took a little trip to another area that has a lot more of the type of terrain that is good for growing cranberries, or wild cranberries grow in abundance. And while it was a very bad year for berries all around, as you're going to see in the next few clips, there were a few that we found, however sparse they were. There were some that were very dried up on the bushes or on the little plants. So in the past, when we've gone at this time of year to collect, there was literally several of those Tupperware containers that we could fill just from that area or other areas. But in this one, you see we got like 10, 11, 12 berries by the end of, just looking around in that general area. So here's those clips, and we'll be back to talk about the benefits of them afterwards. First cranberry that we saw. Wild cranberries. This is the wild cranberry here. Picked it off one of these plants. You can see how they look somewhat similar to blueberries. And as you saw in my blueberry video, which I'll put on the screen right here, right in the top corner here from earlier in the year, a lot of the blueberries were dried up. So some of these cranberries are very dry. You can kind of see they grow in areas that are a little bit swampy. They need quite a bit of water. And this one here is plump. And I'll eat it on camera just to see what you think my reaction is going to be. Or you can see my reaction. It's of course very sour. Tart, but unlike a poisonous berry, it's still going to be quite palatable. Riverine cranberries, it tastes exact same, they're just smaller than the cultivated ones. They should grow in areas like this quite abundantly. So the fact that there's so few this year is disappointing. You can see the whole area here is these rocks with ponds that collect and hold water. Just prime cranberry growing area. The Iroquois and other indigenous tribes of this sort of general area do collect them and make things out of them, and there's a place you can stop and buy them on the way back from our cottage. There's actually a lot of ripe juniper berries. This is a large clump of blueberry bushes, but that season's come and gone at this point. And it was a very dismal season as well. Seeing very little in terms of berries, but I can still identify them for you guys. So I'm back here in the bushes, a little further back, and I found a few more berries. I guess it stayed damp enough back here that the berries were able to grow, whereas out there where I was looking before, it got quite dry in the middle of the season, and the berries haven't been able to develop that well. Let's see if we can bring these into focus. So we see the two little berries down here. So we see 3 berries here that I just picked. So we're going to add those to our Tupperware container of just a couple berries. Such a bountiful harvest. So I don't have my reference guide with me on this trip, so I didn't get to research this beforehand to be able to give you the knowledge on how to identify cranberries. So as you see, there's blueberry plants right here, which are in the Vaccinium family, but also in the Vaccinium family is the cranberry, which has similar leaves, but they're much smaller. So it's similar shape, but if you compare it to a blueberry leaf, it's much smaller in size. That's the blueberry, that's the cranberry. If we were to pluck a piece of the cranberry branch, or an entire plant, I guess, by accident, you can see it tends to grow, almost looks like thyme or rosemary, one of those herbs. So we see a lot of cedars, pines, and other things that make the soil very acidic, and that allows these types of plants to grow. So I found just 3 more cranberries here. growing in this little patch that is right by this water. This is really sort of the iconic spot that you'll find cranberries. You can see them down here, all these little plants. There's just the 3 berries. There might be some other ones hidden amongst here if I were to look a little closer, but they really like the water, and that's quite well known. So anywhere that you have a temperate climate with acidic soil and a lot of water that's quite abundant, especially more so during the middle of the summer throughout to the end of the fall, that's where you're going to find cranberries. And they do come to fruit in the fall, just in time for Thanksgiving. I see 2 more down here, you can probably see on the camera. Pick those. They vary in size, but they're quite large for such a small plant. So also, if you see here, you can sometimes see them growing right above the water. Not sure if you can see that one right in the center of the frame here. I can't reach it from here, but once I turn the camera off, I'll go pick that one that's right down by the water, literally hovering above the water. So technically there's only 4 different varieties of wild cranberries in Ontario. There's the bog cranberry, the large cranberry, there's the lingonberry, which is often also called the partridge berry or the lowbush cranberry. And there's also the highbush cranberry, although the highbush cranberry is technically not even in the same species or genus of cranberries or vaccinium berries. So the genus vaccinium includes cranberries, bilberries, blueberries, and they're very close genetically. Now the ones I was seeing out in those previous clips were, it was either the bog cranberry or the large cranberry. It's a little difficult to see the difference. I'm guessing it was the bog cranberry just because they weren't that large, but I haven't seen a variety of different ones to be able to compare. But it's really beside the point because they're all edible, they're all tasty in the sense of them being edible and having a lot of flavor. They are tart. The interesting thing about cranberries is if you freeze them, they will get sweeter. So that's something that's commonly done. And that was actually done by the indigenous because they would come about at the end of the fall. They would often be on the bush even when the first snows would come, first frosts. And if a berry freezes and then thaws, it gets sweeter. So they would actually wait to pick them, in some cases, until after the first few frosts. And they could also preserve them when the temperatures were cold enough. So some of the recipes that were done traditionally with cranberries, everyone's familiar with using cranberry sauce when it comes to Thanksgiving. The Canadian Thanksgiving is coming up this next weekend. We didn't collect enough that we could make our own cranberry sauce. But that's something I've always enjoyed, and we'll have some cultivated variety of cranberry sauce as a replacement. But maybe next year there'll be enough and I can maybe share a recipe doing something with the cranberries. Some of the traditional recipes was adding cranberries to pemmican, of course. Then there's also dessert where they would take the cranberries, freeze them or pick them after the frost. They'd boil them in some sort of animal fat, and that would preserve them as well, and they could preserve that throughout the winter. And then they'd take that preserved cranberry mixture with the fat, mix it with snow as well as fish oil, and whip it up into a dessert. I'm guessing they added maple syrup as well if it was going to be a dessert. Maybe the cranberries were sweet enough. Now there's a lot of health benefits to wild cranberries as well as regular cranberries. Of course, wild cranberries are generally just going to be less hybridized. They have more potency and concentrations of some of these compounds, the antioxidants and things. So that's why we always look to wild foods as being the best option that's available. So the first thing that a lot of people are aware of is that cranberries are very good at treating kidney and urinary tract problems, most notably urinary tract infections. And what they do, the tannins and some of the other antioxidants and things in the cranberries that are unique to mostly just cranberries, obviously there would be similar compounds in other foods, but this causes a change in the bladder, in the lining of the bladder, which prevents and causes bacteria to not be able to cling onto the walls of the bladder and cause an infection. So you need to either take pure cranberry juice if you're going to be using cranberries or cranberry juice to treat this or work with this, or obviously the whole cranberry. But you don't want to be having loads of sugar in it, other fruit juices mixed in it with it, because you want to be going on low sugar if you're treating any kind of infection. And if it's actually up into the kidneys, if it's spread to the kidneys, I'd probably recommend a much more invasive procedure or drug. Even in that case, I've heard of people getting kidney infections that try to do things the natural route. There might be really good qualified protocols for that, but if we're just talking about cranberries, I wouldn't rely just on that. So the other thing is that cranberries are very cleansing to the urinary tract and kidneys. So we don't have to have an infection to just do a regular cleanse. One of the first cleanses I ever got into the habit of doing, once or twice a year, I'd buy a bottle of organic pure cranberry juice. It's really harsh stuff. You almost certainly have to mix it with water, and I'd do maybe 1/3 to 1/4 of a glass and then the rest water. And then I'd squeeze half a lemon into it. And I'd drink that 3 to 4 times a day, a large glass of it, and that was the first I did that. I'm doing this as a cleanse, and it can actually help prevent or flush out sediment and possibly calcium deposits in the kidneys, and it can help move those through and prevent the obvious problems that come from calcium collecting in the kidneys. It's a very serious problem. So cranberries actually cause the urine to become more acidic. You could always test this with pH paper if you want. It's not making your body more acidic. It's not throwing your health out of balance. That's just an effect that it has on the urine. And that also helps inhibit the bacteria and prevent odd growths from happening inside that very delicate part of your anatomy. Polyphenols in cranberries, which are very similar to what's found in red grapes and in red wine, have been found to be very preventative to both heart disease and certain types of cancer. The tannins in cranberries have been found to be inhibitory to the formation of plaque through the cardiovascular system, as well as the formation of plaque on the teeth. So it's interesting that there's a link between the plaque that forms in the arteries and the plaque that can form on the teeth. And this is actually a component and tied in with calcification. So if we know that cranberries have this unique ability to start bringing and pulling calcium out of the body, specifically mostly the urinary tract, but if we know that it's also good for the circulatory system, but also our mouth, we can understand that it has some effect on the overall calcification on the body. Check out this video I've done not too far in the past on calcification and nanobacteria if you want to learn more about that in general. It's a very interesting thing that occurs in the development of aging in the body and how we age. It's one component of many, but that's a relatively new one of what the medical community is looking at today as possible root causes of aging and just the overall hardening of the body. Another great component of cranberries is simply the vitamin C content. They're very rich in that. Obviously that's going to be reduced if you're cooking it, like making cranberry sauce, etc. So that would be more what you get from the juice or from eating the fresh berries. In Chinese medicine, the sour flavor, which is often associated with that vitamin C content, you see that in a lot of very strong, rich vitamin C foods, like oranges have a slightly sour component, lemons obviously, the amla berry from India, the camu berry from South America, and then cranberries, which obviously aren't as high as some of these other foods, but they do contain a decent content of it. And that sour flavor, like I'm saying, is very good for the liver. We recognize sour foods as being detoxifying for the liver, having an effect on the liver organ system as a whole. And it's actually one of the harder foods and flavors to get in our diet when we look at everything. It's easy to get salty flavors, it's easy to get sweet, it's easy to get bitter when you consider how many different greens and herbs have a bitter component to them. But sour is definitely one that a lot of people could use a little bit more of. And that sort of tart, mouth-puckering flavor that some people don't like, but is something that, in my opinion, we should have a little bit of in our diets here and there. In the comments below if you've ever harvested wild cranberries or anything that's in the vaccinium family, including the blueberries or bilberries. Also, rate and share the video if you so desire. And with that, take care and embrace life without limits.